Let's go to the next segment where we're going to talk about making lead lines lead. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about how to make lead lines actually stand out as the lead vocal. Now, you notice that we kind of went through and we did a little bit of multiband compression, we did the gain reduction, we did some EQ, and then eventually we added some reverb. But there's a couple more things that we can do to this to make it really stand out as a lead vocal. The first thing is, by using gain reduction, you are using a compressor that is made to really make vocals stand out over a mix. And with the gain knob, you can actually increase the saturation of the vocals just by passing this little point here that's drawn right there. So if I hit play and I'm going to raise the gain knob, you're going to hear the volume increase, but you're also going to hear saturation increase.
If you could turn back time and start again.
So that's one way that you could make a vocal kind of more of a lead vocal. Another thing that you can do is upfront EQ. What I mean by this is knowing what kind of frequencies in the frequency spectrum are great for making vocals stand out. And you're going to learn what those are the more you mix vocals. But there's a couple of different frequency areas that you can increase or do additional EQing where you're going to make that lead vocal actually stand out above the rest of the song. So you can usually just start with like a high shelf and kind of increase the treble overall in the whole take.
If you could turn back time and start again.
Now you can also get kind of crazy and fancy if you use more fancier EQ plugins such as the linear EQ broadband is a nice plugin to use on vocals.
If you could turn back time and start again. If you could turn back time and start again. If you could turn back time and start again. If you could turn back time and start again.
So by using different additional EQ, or I should say additive EQ, you are essentially making the vocals a little bit more upfront versus the rest of the mix. Here's what it sounds like.
If you could turn back time and start again.
And without the EQ.
If you could turn back time and start again. If you could turn back time and start again.
Sounds a lot more upfront with the EQ on. And finally, I'm going to show you how to make the lead line more of a lead vocal by adding air. Now, this is a neat little trick that you can use to give your vocals a little bit more top end and a little bit more air without falsely adding it with EQ. So the first step is to take the lead line and double or duplicate the track. And then you want to pretty much remove all the effects from that track. Next, you want to add an EQ that has a high pass filter on it. I'm going to high pass at around 12K. Next, you're going to add a compressor. And I'm going to be pretty brutal with the compressor. The idea here is to just create a solid block of treble out of the vocal. And like I said, you want to be very crazy with these. You almost want to limit the vocal so that it has a ton of high-end energy. Cool. Now, we're going to add that to the original main vocal, and I'm going to turn the volume of this down. I'm just going to hit play and gradually rise it up until I feel like I've added enough air.
If you could turn back time and start again. If you could turn back time and start again.
So here it is without it,
If you could turn back time and
and here it is with it.
If you could turn back time and
And just that subtle difference will make it pop over the rest of the mix like this.
If you could turn back time and start again. If you could turn back time and start again. If you could turn back time and start again.
All right, let's talk about making double lines actually double. One thing that you can do is after the fact, you can add some chorus. I like to do this from time to time just to get a little bit more modulation, typically because the editing will just be so close that it doesn't really add a whole lot of modulation to the original part. So by adding a little bit of chorus, you can create a little bit more of a wider pitch difference between it and the main takes, which will allow your overall vocal balance and your vocal layering to sound bigger than it really is.
If you could turn back time and start again.
So without the chorus, we've got this,
If you could turn back time
and then with the chorus, we've got this.
If you could turn back time and start again.
Another technique that you can use with making doubles more double is EQ carving, and this is kind of more or less just a good way of helping the doubles either stick out or actually not stick out. It kind of depends on what your goals are. There are occasions where the doubles kind of fatten up your low mids, so you can go in and carve out those low mids in your double tracks, which will make your overall vocal frequency response a little bit more scooped. This is what that would sound like right here.
If you could turn back time and start again.
So without it,
If you could turn back time
and with it.
If you could turn back time and
Another thing that's really neat is doing a little bit of automation with your doubles. One thing I've noticed is that you can kind of bring them in and out in volume throughout the song to make certain parts more emphasized. So if I wanted to make the last word of this vocal part more emphasized, I could go in and going into the line, lower my mix a little bit.
If you could turn back time and start again.
So what I did is I actually raised the volume on the phrase "start again."
If you could turn back time and start again.
What's really cool about that is it's going to make this line a little bit more powerful and also a little more memorable. Let's check it out with the music.
If you could turn back time and start again.
Notice how the "start again" line kind of popped out of the mix. That's from that little automation that we did.